Hi, everybody. My name is Samantha Lane, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Shires. We are thrilled to start bringing you some of these Facebook Live events on ShiresTV. We're going to kind of go through, probably for the foreseeable future, every Thursday evening and bring a really awesome event, whether it's a roundtable discussion with a panel like this or a one-on virtual masterclass. As we get to the point where we can open the factory, we're going to do some fun stuff with the factory and do like a virtual tour of the factory and Q&A with our craftsmen and craftswomen as well. So the first one is tonight, and it's a really exciting one. I thought it'd be a great opportunity, since there are so many students at home, to be able to do a roundtable with some of our wonderful Shires artists and clinicians and the people who are working with college students day in and day out, even still now, despite being separated and doing it virtually. So this is going to be pretty fun. We have a really wonderful panel of people. I'm just going to go down the list really quick and let you know who's on today. In remotely alphabetical order, as a trumpet player, but first we have Megan Boutin, who's the adjunct professor of trombone at Texas A&M in Kingsville. We have Justin Cook, who's the assistant professor of trombone at University of Central Arkansas, and he's the festival manager for the International Trombone Festival. We have Joseph Jefferson, who's the assistant professor of trombone, euphonium, and director of jazz studies at Southeast Missouri State University. Brad Palmer, professor of trombone at Columbus State University and founder and faculty member of the Southeast Trombone Symposium. And last but not least, we have Chris Hoff, who's been cracking jokes all day today.
Let's get that straight. Least
of the jokes.
Last and least.
So I just wanted to give that quick rundown of who's on the call, and I'm going to turn it over to our panel to, in that order or as you see fit, give us a short introduction about yourself and what it is that you do, your studio. Just let us know about you.
Absolutely. All right. So I am the adjunct professor of trombone at Texas A&M University in Kingsville. I teach with Dr. Oscar Diaz down there, and we have a really large studio. There are 36 students, so I get the opportunity to work with quite a few of them. Trombone choir is a huge part of what we do, and so that's it's a really great opportunity for me to work with them as well. We've been really active this year, and we're really looking forward to some fun things coming up next year. So I'm down there for a couple of days a week, and then for a few days a week, I'm also up in the Austin area teaching middle school and high school students. And then I am also the principal trombonist of the Temple Symphony, once we can return to doing orchestral playing.
Awesome. So let's see. Next on that list was Jay. You want to give us a little rundown about who you are, what you do?
Sure. I am the assistant professor of trombone at UCA, University of Central Arkansas. We've had a recent growth in trombone. So I'm actually one of two trombone professors at UCA. We just hired an adjunct. His name is Chris Sharp, and he's amazing.
Awesome.
We don't quite have 36. That's kind of a pretty impressive thing y'all have going on down there. But we have 22 this year. We'll have 24 next year. And I also run a jazz band, so it sends my overload a little bit high. So we ended up hiring an adjunct, which is great. I have two side jobs on top of that. I am the festival manager for the International Trombone Festival. So I work with Karen Marston and soon to be another person on this call, Chris Van Hoff.
Whoa.
We're sort of the team that makes up the planners and designers, along with the host, whoever the host happens to be. To put together the festival, it's a really fun job. It's a brutal week, but it's a ton of fun. And then my favorite week of the year, I say this a lot, is I run the what do we call it? What trombone choir is that, Brad, that I run?
The auditor.
Auditors. I almost said adjunct. Adjunct's going in my head too much. I run the auditor choir for the Southeast Trombone Symposium. It's my favorite week because I don't have any real responsibility. I have no organizational responsibility. I just get to show up, play. We just posted, Brad just posted Giant's Tale, and I'm standing between Jim Nova and Paul Pollard. And there's nothing more fun than standing between two just rock star trombone players like that and having a good time. So, like I said, favorite week of the year.
Okay, so thanks, Jay. That's awesome. Joe, do you want to go next?
Hello, everyone. I'm Joseph Jefferson, Assistant Professor of Trombone and Euphonium and Director of Jazz Studies at Southeast Missouri State University in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. This is my third year here, and the trombone studio was very small. I think I had one when I came in, and so it's been a build. And so now we currently have 5 in there, and I have 5 coming in next year. So I'm super excited to get in double digits and really start creating a culture here with it. Students are really taking off and really buying into what it is that we're trying to do here and trying to create. So it's a really good situation for the students that are down here. I stay pretty active just in terms of presenting and performing. And so I'm available, to visit different schools and do different things. And the school has been very supportive in that regard. So that's it.
We just heard from Joe Jefferson. Let's move on. Let me see. Brad Palmer, can you introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll go over to Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Brad Palmer. I'm teaching trombone here at Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia. It's my 21st year here at CSU. Much like Joe, when I started here, my fabulous trombone choir was a quartet. There were just a total of 4 students, and I joke about it. I say, if you could reach 7th position and had a heartbeat, I probably would have given you a scholarship back then. I mean, it's just a completely different environment now. So we have 15 students in the studio. That's my cap. I can't take any more than that. It's an ensemble-driven enrollment, so we try to make sure there are enough trombones to support all the large ensembles, but not too many, so that students aren't don't have anything to do. We want to make sure that the student experience is covered there. So, in addition to my job at CSU, I'm also on the executive board of the International Trombone Association, also on the board of the International Trombone Festival. And about 10 years ago, we started the Southeast Trombone Symposium here at Columbus State, and that's been running and going strong for 10 years, and putting out a whole lot of cool videos on YouTube and our various social media platforms. So that's been a lot of fun for me too, as kind of a technology geek. I get to produce a lot of recordings for my friends that come to town, and Jay Cook being one of them, and so many others. So it's been a fun sort of combination of all of the things that I like to do, being a player, being an organizer, being a teacher, and a technology geek as well. And I get a lot of opportunities to sub with the Atlanta Symphony and other regional orchestras. So I play as much as I like to play. So I think I have the best job on the planet.
My only question for you is, if you're such a tech geek, then why aren't you jumping in and fixing my live stream? All of you are all way smarter than I am, for sure.
You're killing it now. It's working great.
Yeah. So last but not least in this is Chris Van Hoff. Can you give us a quick rundown on who you are? And
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Van Hoff. I teach trombone at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. We hosted the International Trombone Festival last year. I've been here I live in Indianapolis, just moved, we've been here for, just finished my 3rd year. Before that, I was at Colorado State for 4 years, Fort Collins, and then in other places before that. Here at Ball State, we have a studio that is going to be north of 20 for the first time in the fall. This school, Ball State, was the first school to win the Emory Remington Trombone Choir competition at the very first ITF in the 70s. And that's a history that I take really seriously here. So trombone choir is a big deal, and I'm excited to see the kind of reestablishment of really great trombone choir playing here. We have a doctoral program. We have, for masters, we have a variety of undergraduate degrees, including a music media production program, which is a really cool program. And I have a couple of players who do that, who are also great players. So I love this job because it's a lot of variety, a lot of different kinds of students. And we have a full-time jazz trombone teacher, my colleague Freddie Mendoza. So that's always good for a trombone studio to have a healthy jazz program as well. So that's cool. Outside of the school, I freelance here in Indianapolis. I play with the Indianapolis Symphony some regional orchestras. I play with the Kalamazoo Symphony in Michigan sometimes, and a couple of things like that. Do some recording here in Indy. But above all, I have two boys, 4 and 7, and my wonderful wife, and that's what really matters. So that's that.
Yay! Well, we finally got through introductions. Sorry, guys. I'm going to start it off. We're starting to get some questions here, but just to ease us in a little bit, can each of you run down a little bit, or at least shortly, when did you decide to go into college teaching? What was it about college teaching that made you want to? I mean, it's an amazing gig. There are so many wonderful attributes, but it's a lot of work. There's like Chris just said, there's so much versatility, but it pulls you in a lot of directions. What made you, as a player and a trombonist, decide this is not for me?
If that's okay, I'll take that. I have a short answer. I distinctly remember being a sophomore at Western Michigan. I studied with Steve Wolfenbarger in college, and I was a music ed major. And my sophomore year, he and I had kind of the career talk, and he said, you're playing well and doing good work. You could see where this goes. He said, what do you want to do? And I will never forget looking at him and saying, I want to do what you do. That looks great.
Wow.
Like, you get to choose who you get to play with. You get to choose more or less the music you get to play for recitals and stuff like that. And you still get to teach. I love teaching. So for me, it was kind of something that I was aware of early on. And Steve was and still always has been a great guide for me and mentor in kind of following that path.
Nice.
I'll chime in because I have 100% the opposite story. I didn't really know I wanted to be a college trombone professor until I was a college trombone professor, if that makes any sort of sense. I knew I wanted to go into music. I actually have a master's degree in wind conducting. I really enjoy band. I thought for a while I was going to be a high school band director. When I was getting my doctorate at North Texas, I thought about staying in Dallas and just doing the high school band thing. Because if you haven't heard some of the high school bands out of Texas, they're pretty unreal. Yeah, like it's just mind blowing what some of these high school kids can do. And it was like, well, why don't I just do this? And then after winning UCA, I was like, no. I have this belief in everything that we do, whether it's, going to grad school or the job we get, everything happens for a reason. And so the reason for me, coming into college is exactly what we talked about. I get to play my horn, teach the students I want to teach, play the things I want to do, freelance, play with great players, but also, live a great life here. So, but yeah, it's the opposite as Chris. I knew I wanted to do something high end in music. I didn't know I wanted to do this specific job until I accidentally won a job.
It's crazy how different that approach was for both.
And weirdly, Jay, now we're so not the opposite. We're like,
I know.
2 peas in a pod. How did that happen? I don't know.
I don't know. Anybody else got an interesting?
I'll
Yeah.
next. So my undergraduate degree was in music education, and I realized about halfway through that degree that I did not want to teach high school band. That wasn't something I was interested in doing. But I did that. I finished that degree, and I actually did teach music in the public schools. I did a K through 6 position for a year. A very, very super small district, and I was teaching kindergartners all the way through 6th graders, general music, a little bit of everything. And I knew that I didn't want to be in the public schools, but that year was really informative for me, and I learned a lot about it, and I knew I loved teaching. Like I love performing and I love playing, and that's not diminished by teaching, but I wasn't sure what I was going to love about teaching. And what I love about teaching is the students, and I love serving them and doing and helping them. And so in a sort of roundabout, meandering way, I eventually made my way to Texas. And because of the band program, like Justin was talking about a little bit, the band programs here are huge and massive, and I immediately was able to jump in and start teaching public school students. And like Chris, I had a moment where I said, this is what I am made to do. I'm supposed to do this. I feel like this is what is, like, I'm meant for this job. I remember the school I was in. I remember the horrible tiny little practice room I was in, but I still said, I love this and I want to do this more. I didn't have my doctorate at that point, so it took me a few years to get around to finishing the DMA, and now I'm at a school that I love, and I have a huge number of students, and I couldn't be happier. I absolutely love it. But I had a little bit of that moment also where I just said, this is what I'm supposed to do. I love it because of the students. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm going to get to a quick question, and just a heads up for everybody who's watching. If you have questions for our panel about, I won't say anything, but for anything related to trombone or practicing, Chris might be willing to field something from left field. Not sure. Feel free to comment on the thing. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm not going to touch any buttons for fear of the live stream going down, but I will keep my eye on the comment section. But Ray had a good question. So many of you work with a pretty wide variety of players, whether it's tenor or bass. Some of you are doing jazz and orchestral or you know, the more classical realm of things. But how do you work with students on switching between tenor and bass? What is your philosophy for doing that? Do you have any good practice tips?
Well, I'll chime in on
Yeah,
that.
do it.
I think it's important not only you have to play the other instrument. You have to, you know, if you're going to be doing it, you need to be doing it. So you don't need to just warm up on one instrument today. Swap off some days. Have one day that you're warming up on bass, that you're playing tenor, and actually work on moving back to back on those different horns. It's very similar to when I'm playing my medium bore horn and playing my large bore. If you aren't doing it, if you aren't used to how that feels on the face, it's never going to become something that's going to be consistent. So just really making sure that you're putting yourself through the paces with some kind of regularity with it, rather than just, you know, trying to take the horn out when it's time to play it. Because you definitely have to develop that sound concept for that other horn, which is going to be critical for it to, you know, to not sound like a poser when you're when you're playing that other horn, you know.
So, like, do you work with your students on both instruments in lessons? For example, like, do you have somebody bring in, like, if they have to play in the opera and they're all of a sudden playing, they have to do more alto that they're not used to, or they have to do a different instrument. Do you work with them on that in the lessons?
Well, right now, with the sophomore that I have, he was playing. We had him doing some alto stuff on a straight tenor right now, just to kind of get him settled in with that. Probably around junior year, senior year, that'll be the time that they're starting to, unless they show just like, you know, like, hey, I really want to get involved with this, I really start making sure that they understand the nuances of that alto trombone. But I definitely have a lot of students that are playing in, of course, wind ensemble, jazz ensemble,
Right, everything.
and orchestra. So being able to differentiate between styles and articulation and the blow of those different instruments, I think that's critical. So definitely, if they have parts that they're having trouble with, definitely have them bring those horns in, and we'll divide time in that lesson to kind of focus in on those things.
Anybody else? Jay, you do a lot of both horns frequently.
You have to remember to unmute before you start talking. I do. I'm a big believer in doubling, in part for a lot of reasons, but in part because there are, five big five orchestras. So there's five big five principal trombone jobs in the world. So that you have to be able to do it all. The last Wicked came through town last January. I guess right before it all shut down. And I played the trombone part, which is tenor trombone and bass trombone. Last year we had Book of Mormon, which is jazz trombone. It's the small bore trombone and bass trombone. And those are my favorite gigs because you're just playing everything. And it's what Joseph said. The only way to do it is to do it. So like today's a light practice day because I built a swing set and we have this chat and kind of a family oriented day. So I warmed up on tenor. For me, there's something about home base. I always want to start and end the day on home base, which for me is my tenor. So I always do that, but I always do a half-hour bass trombone playing in the middle of the day. And then sometimes I'll work in some improv on the small horn, or I'll just play some styles on the small horn, or you know, whatever. But to me, the big thing is that you do it every day. The other thing too is finding those exercises and those things that work best for you on those horns. And there's sort of some different approaches. Some folks want to overlap exercises. Some folks want completely separating exercises. I tend to like the exercises that separate. When I pick up a bass trombone, I want my body to know I'm playing bass trombone right now. And there's a certain set of things I do when I play it. The first national tour show that I played ever was the bass trombone and tuba part on Mary Poppins in Dallas. And so my wife remembers this. I was sitting spring break with a tuba on one side and a bass trombone on the other. And I would do an exercise on bass trombone, put it down, pick up the tuba and start playing tuba, put it down, pick up the bass trombone, and just kind of going back and forth. So your body could make the switch real fast and know I'm playing this instrument now. This is what I do to do that instrument. So
when you describe going back and forth between trombone and tuba, it makes me think how silly I was to be so freaked out about going back and forth between like B flat and C trumpet in a quintet performance.
Yeah, it's weird. I had to get lessons on tuba. You got to put a lot of flesh in that mouthpiece to make that thing vibrate. So it's a different animal, to say the least.
Yeah, no kidding. So here, let's get to another question, because I had some people write in some questions ahead of time too. This is a big one. I'd love for everybody to chime in on this. What are you telling your students right now? How are you suggesting that they practice? What are you suggesting that they practice? It'd be great to hear from, as many of you as possible, just because I think there's going to be a lot of people who watch this who would love some additional guidance.
Well, I'll start. I've been pretty quiet, so I'll chime in on this one. One of the most important things for me as a teacher is to get my students to a place where they can really teach themselves and guide themselves. So my students know every week we're working on lyrical etudes, we're working on technical etudes, we're working on solo repertoire, maybe orchestral excerpts, depending on the student. Of course, the fundamentals and technique work that they do. So as long as those categories are covered, my students are actually quite comfortable assigning themselves, the specific etudes to do to fulfill those requirements. So I don't think that this is actually too crazy for my students to sort of understand. And we were talking right before we went live here. None of us are happy this is happening, but one of the things that all of our students, I think, are getting quite good at, whether they like it or not, is recording themselves. I always say recording yourself is easy. Listening back is the hard part, right?
Totally.
And it's such an honest thing. You ask your mom, before you leave the house, hey mom, how do I look? She's gonna say, you look great. And you look in the mirror and there's a booger on your cheek and your hair's all messed up, right? You want to know what you really look like, look in the mirror. And same with your playing. You want to know what you sound like, record yourself. So my students are becoming even more honest with themselves through this process and getting used to the process of course, I'm involved at every step in the way, but when they're recording themselves, this process of self-diagnosis and all of that is just, it's really essential for them when they leave the care of the trombone studio, whether it's for the summer or for when they get a job and they're out there. So I think it's really important.
I'll just say one quick thing. I agree with everything that Brad just said. That's spot on. The one of the biggest challenges that I've found and that I've been trying to help the students deal with is a significant studio-wide case of practice room syndrome, where they're all playing in really dry, dead spaces.
Yeah.
Some of them are even like concerned that they don't want to disrupt their family. I'm fortunate that I have this big room on the other side of the screen where I can practice, and it's actually kind of nice at home, but not everybody has that. So and the same thing happens at music school too. You get stuck just playing in the practice room, but we have access to some rehearsal rooms and classrooms and stuff that you can play in, which is I think really important for trombone players. So that's been something that we've kind of had to deal with, and that's taken some kind of creative thinking about. You gotta make sure that when you're practicing in your bedroom, if that's the only spot you have to remember that you're still playing as though you're in Sursa Hall, which is our concert hall here. So that's been kind of a challenge for some of them, but I've noticed that as we've had that conversation, that our lockdown happened after spring break. We had early spring break, so we had 6 straight weeks of online lessons. Wow. And as those weeks rolled on, I noticed that the practice room syndrome got a little bit better, but it was I found it important to address that.
Like positive visualization for like, even though you're in this small place, you're thinking about what it would be like if you're performing at you know, a jury hearing somewhere on stage or whatever.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's, I mean, you know, it's kind of a bummer because it can make you feel good about yourself when you're practicing in a nice, you know, resonant space. And it can be kind of humbling when you're just in a real dry space because you're not getting kind of the room feedback. But yeah, just kind of some mental gymnastics and training for that. I found that to be useful in this process.
Yeah, sure.
To add in, because both those are absolutely dead on. The recording thing has been real. I think it's pretty easy to not record, and then you go into lessons like, well, I sounded better in the practice room. Like, but did you? But one of the things,
proof.
yeah, right. Do you have a recording of it? I didn't think so. But one of the things I always do in my studio, I do it at the beginning of every semester, and it's proved beneficial now, is we do a goals sheet. And the goals sheet split between two lines. So one is personal goals and one is professional goals. So when we went into pandemic mode, I ignored personal goals just because it wasn't within the purview of what I needed it to cover. But every year, you know, at the beginning of the fall and the spring, we go through those. And I do find it fascinating when, not to make fun of freshmen, but freshmen will show up and they'll write, in 10 years, I want a white picket fence in a house in Lubbock, Texas, on the personal side. And on the professional side, I'd be like, I want to be principal trombone of the Chicago Symphony. Well, one of those is going to win.
Right.
And it's always the personal side. So I hope you like Lubbock. You know, it's one of those things. So, but it was what, you know, like with the goal sheet, it gives you purpose to your practice. Like, and so we talked about when we went into pandemic mode, none of us are going to perform in public until September. October, we don't know. Maybe we'll get a 4th of July concert. The odds are slim, but so at earliest, let's say August. So now's the time to come up with, what are your goals? What do you need to get better at articulation? Do you need to get better at high range? Do you need to get better at excerpts? Do you need to get better at rhythm? And breaking that down. And now's the time to sound terrible because you're just playing for mom and dad. My dog howls while I practice. It's pretty funny. So take those things you're not good at and do them now because nobody's going to hear you for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that topic. This is the perfect time for students to work on, you know, things like embouchure, that changes that they're going through, or, you know, really dig deep into what you need to do to fix your articulation. Finally, you don't have any commitments in terms of playing in wind ensemble. You don't have to play in jazz band. You don't have to switch back and forth from different styles. You can literally just focus on your needs at this exact moment. So it's a perfect time to work on those details of your playing that maybe have been a little bit pushed aside because you've had to go to a wind ensemble rehearsal, and then you've had to play second in trombone quartet or whatever it is. And you don't get to choose, normally you don't get to choose how much and when you play every day, but now you do. Now you get to say, I can have this luxurious warm-up time and I can work on my fundamentals. I mean, I don't think any of my students are feeling like they're tight for practice time. You know, they have plenty of time in the day to fill it up. So that's one thing. I've had some students who've been working on embouchure changes or some real like embouchure strengthening things. And so, you know, recording, and especially for a lot of what we're having our students do is do videos. And so for the students to get in front of a video and see themselves, they can see some of those things that are maybe going on with their face that they didn't, you know, that they're not used to normally seeing. And so you can really dig into some of those details of your playing, so those weak areas that, you know, maybe don't get as big of a piece of the pie that they should normally get. So that's definitely one aspect that we've been really focusing on with them.
That's great. Those are great things. One thing I've been doing with the studio is kind of a little bit of what you were talking about in terms of just putting the microscope on your playing and really focusing in on things. But I've really been kind of nailing home. I wanted my students to kind of keep the same routine that they had when they were in school, because it's so critical at this point, halfway in the semester. Then when you go home and you change your routine, and then sometimes you look at one day and I'm not really putting in those hours that you were putting in. So throughout in our studio, we kind of establish what times, you know, they know at 8 o'clock every morning I'm in there warming up. And, you know, I have some that beat me in there some days, and they're in their practice rooms and they're warming up. So if you can at home, keep that consistent and then continue to work on those things, because that's also not only going to help you with trombone, but it's also going to help you with the rest of those classes that you have to do. Because although we're in this pandemic, we need you to be here in the fall.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're handling business across the board. So that's something I've been telling the studio.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for that. We got a really interesting question from Dave Sporny, who wanted to know, how do you advise performance majors these days when the business is definitely shrinking? It's different than it was when we were going through school. For those who are pursuing performance, what's the talk that you have with your students? What suggestions do you have?
Can I say one? This is one opinion that I'm going to state, and then I'll toss it off. This is an opinion I hold dearly. I do not think we should offer performance degrees at schools anymore. I think they should be called freelance musician degrees. That is what the degree should be called, because that is how we should be training our current performance majors, is to be freelance musicians, and that includes everything from teaching private lessons, to leading an ensemble, to playing chamber music, to writing and arranging music, to knowing about arts administration. So I believe very firmly that the performance degree should go away, and with the exception of maybe like Juilliard and NEC, and we should offer freelance musician degrees. That's an opinion that I hold, and I hold it very strongly. And I feel lucky that here at the school where I am, we actually offer an entrepreneurship certificate and
That's awesome.
an auxiliary to the degree program. So for me, that's how my career's been built. I've never won an audition, but I've played a bunch. So that's for me. Sorry to like jump right on it, but I feel really passionate about that and how it's kind of panned out for me in my career. That's really what I try to get at with my performance majors, is that you're not a performance major, you're a freelance musician major.
Well said.
Go ahead. Sorry, let me jump in real quick. I think in some ways this pandemic is just making us sort of look through a narrower lens about the realities of what these issues were already there a year ago. It was already a tough business to get into, to make it as a performer. So I think part of our job, and this is a little bit of what Chris was alluding to too, is to be honest with our students. Look, you are not going to be a trombone soloist for your career. I mean, there's one out there, right? I mean, that just doesn't happen. You're probably going to be doing a lot of things. And for us to be honest with our students and say, look, the more that you branch out and learn other skills and learn other styles and learn, ways of marketing yourself and entrepreneurship and all these things. I mean, this is so critically important. Web design, recording, there's so many things that are related to music that aren't exactly, performing. But the other thing that I want to mention here is, if we do our jobs right, I really think that a performance degree, as it is, whatever you want to call it, I think these skills are quite transferable to many other avenues, say medical school, for example, or whatever. If we're doing our job right and opening our students' eyes to the realities and to what where society is heading, where the industry is heading, et cetera, but also encouraging them not just to branch out and to do other things, to be critical thinkers, to be self-motivated. There are so many things that go into being a music student at a high level, that those skills are transferable to other things if their dream of sitting in the back of the Chicago Symphony, doesn't work out for them. And I think that's on us. Last thing I want to say about this is, don't ever get a performance degree that you have to pay a lot of money to do. That is just the biggest piece of advice that I can give you. If you do it and it's free and great, then what have you lost? You could argue 4 years, but you had an awesome time and a great education and worked with some wonderful people, and then you're going to do something else. Now you do a performance degree and you have $80,000 in student loan debt, you're screwed. at that point. Sorry to be direct about it.
No, let's be honest.
I counsel, I'm very adamant about that for incoming students. If you want to try this and it's sort of risk-free in terms of your financial future, that's a risk that I think a lot of people, should consider, but not if it's going to be a mountain of debt.
Just to tack onto that, I say that to a lot of students about just school in general. There are so many amazing trombone professors all across the country at these great schools. You don't have to drop $80,000 on an undergraduate degree. Get your undergrad at, this is in Arkansas, and I can think of 5, 6, 7 folks off the top of my head that fast that are all fabulous. Get your undergrad degree, get amazing at what you're doing, and then spend the money on a master's degree. Spend the money and get detailed as you go into your advanced degrees, but don't spend $80,000, $100,000, whatever your degrees are unless if you are of that level, if you are the second coming of Christian Lindbergh or Joseph Alessi, spend the money, you'll make it back.
And we'll be grateful as the community.
Totally.
I think more of it to that point, I think it's important. I mean, I was fortunate enough, I went to a historically Black university for my undergrad at Norfolk State University, and Javier was my section leader. And so being in that kind of environment and having my teacher, Paul Adams, taught Dr. Brickens at UT. So, and he's from New Orleans. So, he's from Louisiana. So having a studio and a teacher that teaches you both sides of the horn and just being flexible to the situations is extremely critical. So when you're looking at schools, think about specifically, what is it that you want to do? What do you like doing? Are you going to benefit studying with someone that has those skills that is going to put you in the position for that? Or if you just want to do this one thing, go study with that type of person. Really don't waste time trying to, kind of figure it out, because you can waste a lot of time. If you just want to play excerpts, then then go get with somebody that's doing that, if that's what you want to do. But I completely agree with Chris. It's trombone. There aren't that many gigs out there. It's not like you play guitar or drums or bass. Oh, you need a trombone for this Dixieland band? Okay, great, perfect. All right, I'm there. This polka band? Okay, great. So it's just being available and being willing. I think that's the big thing, being willing to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations.
It's funny. I remember last summer at the Trombone Festival, we did a diversity panel. And my old teacher, Tony Baker, moderated that. And somebody asked, I don't even remember specifically what the question was, but his response was, how I got good at doing things? I'm not good at saying no.
Yeah, it was a great moment too. Everybody was like,
and I think the world of Tony. I studied with him for 3.5 years, and I'm standing in the back of the room like, huh, well, that was really smart. So just saying yes to things and learning, and then you meet all kinds of new people, all kinds of great things. I think we could all go off on how our careers have formed just because we said yes to teaching drum corps, or yes to, I'll do this recording session, and then you meet somebody that changes your life. So
that's funny, Jay, because when I was doing my doctorate with Mark Etzler, who is a uniquely colorful character in the trombone world, let's all agree on that, and somebody who I really love and respect dearly, he did not say something like Tony Baker. He was like, Chris, what are you playing this high school pit orchestra for? You're really a gig whore, man. You got to cut it out. I can't say no. I'm sorry.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point.
I think one thing that I hear coming up though is that mentors are really important, and knowing, having, if you're being young, being an incoming freshman to college, you've never really had to make a whole lot of decisions for yourself, or maybe really had to think about the real world so much, and so having a mentor, having somebody that you trust, having somebody that will direct you and open your eyes to the possibilities of, if you're not sure where you want to go, or help to focus you and zoom you in on exactly where you need to go, is something that I think is really important. Finding that person. It doesn't have to be your trombone teacher. I mean, I've had some really great mentors who have been music history professors, or not even musicians, English professors, or just people in your life that that you can trust that are voices that can help to open your eyes and to help you become more curious and to look into, well, maybe if I'm not going to become just this orchestral player, what else is out there for me? What else can I do? What else can I find that I enjoy and I love? So finding those people that can help to expand your world and also kind of give you that direction, or maybe even a kick in the ass when you need it too, in the right direction. Those are people that you should seek out and absolutely just take the experience of what they can give you.
I have a quick follow-up question that kind of just popped up, and it's nicely along these lines. Josie, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but Josie was asking about what are some great resume building opportunities for college students who want to teach after their undergrad degree. So like Megan, you were talking about finding these opportunities, working with mentors. Like, what do you guys all say to your students about getting out there? Like, yeah, say yes to the gigs when you can and all of that, but do you encourage them to partner with a school? Do you encourage them to join an organization or something? What do you say to your music ed students, for example?
Well, I'll just jump in real quick. With that in mind, getting your name out there, but starting to, while you're in college, already starting to build yourself a little bit as a brand and start to get yourself out there. Get all your materials ready now in college. Don't wait until somebody, when you're looking for a job, is asking, well, what recordings do you have of yourself? Or what have you done? Start doing that now. And, even as college students, you can get really fantastic experience. You may not get paid for it, but that's okay because the experience is worth it. And to put things on your resume. Well, this summer, if there were, summer camps, maybe, volunteer to do a masterclass. Go to your old high school if they offer, a summer band camp and say, hey, I would love to teach an hour masterclass on warm-ups, or I'd love to help teach, and I'd love to help, teach your students, what can I do for you? And then start to build those things that that you're going to need, like start to make recordings. This summer seems like it's going to be a really long stretch of time because I feel like we've already been in these sort of 6 weeks of floating, and summer feels like it's going back to, if August feels like a really long time away. So, take the opportunity to do some projects for yourself too, like get some really, really good recordings of yourself. So that way you have some materials built up already that you can offer, but I'll stop there.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in with opportunities that you suggest your music ed students pursue?
Just one real quick thing here, which Jay was probably just about to say.
Probably.
Peas in a pot, like I said. It is, well, like, for example, I think you need to know your market. So, for example, here in Indiana, if you want to teach high school band, you have got to know how to deal with drum corps. Whether you like drum corps or not, you have to know how to do that. So if you're not going to go out and pay the money to do a drum corps tour over the summer, then you need to go work with one of the junior drum corps or work with a high school where you can gain that experience. So I think that's a big thing. And that's for music ed, but really that's for any major. You need to know the market into which you're going and then try to, because what you do in school is not going to be everything. So if I use the high school band example in Indiana. If you want to do that, you got to have drum corps experience. If you want to do, fill in the blank other thing, then find some opportunities to fill that hole on your resume.
And if somebody, just as a really quick aside, like if somebody has no idea how to go about doing that, talking to your professor is at least a good place to start. Like,
yeah, and
Google forever trying to figure it out. Like at least, like Megan was saying, talk to your mentor, talk to colleagues in your studio, maybe.
Yep. Talk to the music ed faculty. Talk to the ensemble directors. They can direct you for some of those things that you'll need.
Jay, what were you gonna say?
Pretty much that. Nailed it, Chris.
And we're done.
Go do that, Josie, and practice.
I'll tell you, like my own experience, because my undergrad was in music ed, and I thought I was going to be a band director. I marched Blue Devils Drum and Bugle Corps in 2003, and the second I got back from Blue Devils, I was emailing band directors, and I was willing to drive as far as my broken down piece of junk car would take me without dying. to tech, and I ended up teaching at a pretty decent band in Phoenix. I would drive down on Thursday nights from Flagstaff's, 2 hours down. I would teach band. I would drive back 2 hours. But so at 19, I was starting to work those band director connections. And the same thing when I got to Dallas. So I think it's just like freelancing. It's just like what Chris said. Like, start getting your feelers out. Start learning how to do the thing. Start, if nothing else, go observe a great teacher in the area.
It's a great idea. It's great.
Like, if you want, it's not everybody's built to go teach at Flower Mound High School or Lassiter High School or Carmel High School or these giant high schools. Maybe you want to teach at a small school. Go find a great teacher at a small school and observe them. Because it's a different it is a completely different animal than running a high school band of 350 kids on a $500,000 a year budget. Those are two very different animals. So I'll stop talking.
Anybody else want to chime in before we get to some other stuff? Let's get to some other stuff then. So let's chat about, if each of you could pick 3 of your favorite like etude or like practicing tools. What are your like top 3 go-tos that you're digging out and keeping on your stand every day? Because we've had a few people asking about fundamentals and warm-up routines and all that fun stuff.
The Snedeker, definitely for me.
Nice. That's good.
Stand lyrical etudes. They're pretty. They're pretty, and they get pretty difficult.
They do. They're great. They're beautiful.
This quarantine, I have rediscovered how nice it is to play the gruppetto and appoggiatura and that part of the Arbenz book. I always looked over it. It's actually really nice music. So basically, I mean, my students know this. We live out of Arbenz, Schlossberg, Rochow, and Waxman. That's where we start. And the Edwards lip slurs that's kind of the start point. But I've found some parts of the Arbenz that I gloss over. So don't ignore the non-intervals part of Arbenz or whatever.
Yeah, for me, it's Bordoni, Rochow, Conconi. It's singing and making a line. I think of course, we got to play Arbenz. We got to have great technique. We got to be able to move our right hands. We got to be able to articulate. But to me, none of that means squat if you can't sing and be musical and make a line. So that's got to be the most important thing. From a fundamental standpoint, though, there are so many great routines out there right now. Again, I kind of come back to what my students, and they know they need to be doing, long tones. They need to be doing high range, low range, loud, soft, lip slurs, fast lip slurs, slow lip slurs, articulation working. So as long as they have a routine that is hitting all of those categories, I think there's a ton of great ones out there, or they can kind of combine a few to make their own. It's fine with me, but I come back to Rochow, Bordoni, Conconi, those kind of things to make a line, sing.
I've really been also checking out the Blazevich low range studies, especially for tenor, just really hitting those registers and being comfortable down there. And for my studio that's listening, that's coming in. That's coming in.
Whole new syllabus. It's gonna be great.
That's absolutely critical. Sometimes when you need that low D or that low C to just really be there on tenor, if you're not practicing down there, that's something that's been really good. So we can just really relax and work on sound, like Brad said.
Nice.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Brad, I'm a big Bordoni nut. All of my students do them all the ways. Tenor clef down the octave, bass clef down 2 octaves. That's always fun to watch people try to struggle through. I also am a huge fan of Tyrell. I don't know why I like that book as much as I do, but I really nerd out on it. There's something about the consistency and clarity of it that really works for me. On bass trombone, I've been doing a lot of Blazevich and a lot of Snedeker low range.
Nice.
That's if you need a humbling experience as a bass trombone player, play those Snedeker low range A2. I'm still on number 1, still there 6 weeks later. It's brutal. But it's really fun to kind of learn and grow, in part because anytime I'm in that range on a bass trombone, I'm usually reading it up the octave and then just transposing down. And so in that book, it's because I'm a tenor player, so I just read tenor music. So in that book, like it's all the ledger lines are there, and so it's a lot of that. I also am a huge fan of the Bach cello suites to practice. I do not like Bach cello suites in performance.
Brad's like.
But I love them as a study in musicianship. There's a great book by Mark Lusk The beginning of the book is about how to interpret them, how to do, how to play Bach on a trombone. And then the back part is the Bach cello suites with no markings. You create your own edition. And so you can learn a lot about phrasing and musicianship. You get all over the instrument from low to high. But again, wonderful in practice.
Resources.
Yeah.
Right, resources.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have a whole lot more to add. It's all been, I hit that, you know, Arben's, Bordoni Rochu's. I mean, those are the go-tos. Voxman, Terrell, Coprash. I also really like to hit those. But I mean, when it comes to just basic fundamentals, I think our daily diet of Arben's and Rochu, we are set with a lot of that. That's plenty. I can do months. I can do hours. I can do months of just, you know, hours and hours of Bordonis and Arben's. But the resources, yeah, absolutely. There's so many things out there that are available to us. You know, that weren't available online. And I'll just put a little plug in that the Alessi Music Studios online is
super great.
There's some incredible stuff there. So I've been able to, we've been lucky to be able to check that out. And it's got just a whole huge resource in there for all kinds of, you know, things. But it's a great thing to kind of keep you motivated too, finding new resources and new warm-ups and getting sort of out of still covering all your bases. You know, we still, when it comes to fundamentals, you still have to cover, like Brad said, you know, your range, your articulation, your all those aspects of your dynamics, you know, all those aspects of our fundamentals. But sometimes getting out of a rut of doing the same ones day after day can give you some new inspiration and motivation and just kind of push you a little farther too.
Nice.
Just to add one more curveball, sorry. One of the things I make my students do a lot is tunes. And so the final exam of every semester is they have to play 5 tunes in 12 keys. One of them has to be a minor key, a minor tune. And so if you want a good way to work your
a minor tune or a minor tune? A
minor tune. If you want a good way to work your ears out and work some fundamentals, do some tunes. And if you think it's easy, just do it. Grab Mary Had a Little Lamb, start in B flat, and then see if you can go up a half a step. You might be shocked at how much harder it is. So
wait, you had undergrad with me? That's what Mary Had a Little Lamb, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. That was before we could move on to anything.
Yeah. And I did make an agreement with my students at one point. I had to stop because they started beating me. But as I said, if you could bring in hard tunes in 12 keys, you only have to do 1 tune. So I had a student one semester do the full Winnie the Pooh opening, which is shockingly hard. And this is a student of mine who's now studying with Ian Bousfield. But he, the next one he brought in was Days of Wine and Roses in 12 keys. And I was like, all right, I'm done. You beat me.
You win.
You got it. Can we go back to Mary Had a Little Lamb? Thank you.
Chris is like shaking his head like, oh God.
Man, I just don't play by ear. I don't believe in that. I stick to the written page by the book. I'm a very like buttoned up kind of trombone player. So
what's your shirt say again?
It says the dude abides, Sam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys have time to stay on for a little bit since our live stream got interrupted? If anybody has to jet, feel free. But we have a few other questions I'd love to grab if you don't mind.
I think I speak for everyone when I say that none of us have anything going on right now. This is great. Thank you for giving
Let me check. Oh yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
Super. All right. So another question. Let me just see. What are you looking for? This is like the top secret question that everybody wants to know from college professors. What do you look for when somebody auditions for you? Chris?
Trombone side of things, sound.
Yeah.
That is the number one thing I care about.
Yeah.
And all the rest is grades and attitude. That for me, I've found that is what matters the most, is that if you start with a good sound, that's really, really key. And if you have good grades, that shows that you have a good work ethic, which means that whatever faces you in college, we can deal with. And if you have a good attitude, that means that everyone else in the studio will tolerate you because they already have good attitudes.
Yes.
I'll just leave it at that.
Nice.
That's a great answer. And I would add just one thing to that as far as like, if you're preparing for an audition and you're thinking about, all right, what is this person looking for in the audition? Sound, absolutely. I mean, good rhythm, good pitch, but I mean, we can fix those things. I mean, unless the ear is just completely out to lunch, that's something that maybe we can't fix. But for me, the biggest thing is I want you to speak to me in the audition musically. I mean, I want you to communicate, be a musician. I don't expect anybody to come in and play perfectly on the trombone. If you did, you wouldn't be doing an undergraduate audition anyway. But to emote, to be musical, to communicate, I think is really critical. And I would just add one other thing, and I probably speak for everybody in this panel. To be a good communicator, when you email me, make a sentence, a complete sentence. You know, don't. I mean, it's okay to Facebook message me. That's cool, but start to treat the you know, the audition process as the professional that you want to be when you leave the school. Start to emulate that right away in your communication with prospective teachers.
Yeah, like my 7-year-old might make fun of me and say that I'm not a real doctor, which is true. But when maybe you should not title the email Chris when you first email me, and it's mostly, it's fine like after a while, but we don't know each other yet, so you don't start with that. I agree 100% with what Brad just said. Yeah.
Just to add on, the playing stuff is absolutely correct. One of the number one things I look for, and I would bet everyone in this panel looks for, is the culture of my studio is vital. And so there's a Bible verse, iron sharpens iron. We're all in this together. We're all learning this together, including me. I mean, I practice my Clark studies daily because I'm not great at them yet. So we stay at it daily, and we're all in it together. And if you come in and you're not going to gel with that culture, I'm not as interested in you. You could be the world's greatest trombone player. I'll probably accept you. But it's more important to me that you come in and are willing to work. The first sign I put up in my office when I moved in 7 years ago was a hard work trumps talent every day of the week. I'm not a big believer in talent. It's important, but at this level, we pretty much all have it. So it's more about, are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to put in the effort? Because if you are, we can get you there. It's about the effort, the work, and are we willing to do this together? Are you willing to do quartets, duets? Or are we, you know, we do 2 daily routine sessions a week. Are you going to do daily routines with friends the rest of the week? Are you in this to win this to the end? So the playing is important, and sound is my number one in playing, yes. But for me, it's more about culture. It's more about, are you going to come in and be a team player in what we're doing here at UCA?
Yeah, if you think about it, I mean, the trombone is just a hunk of metal that we hold in our hands, and we're learning how to manipulate it, and that's a skill that, you know, will change and you know, will grow. But fundamentally, the essence of who you are as a person, do you have that work ethic to get the good grades in high school? Maybe, you know, did you have a job that, you know, shows, or did you do some community service, or are you, you know, who are you as a person, and how are you going to contribute to the studio, and how are you going to, you know, work towards your own growth, or the things that make more of a difference than what you do on your horn when you first come in. Those things, those are skills that will grow and will develop, but they will, that is dependent on your work ethic and who you are as a person. And are you a musician fundamentally? Because we're all musicians before we're trombonists.
Totally. That's awesome. That was a great response. Thank you guys. That was really cool. Let's see. Let's get to just like anything else geeky, and then I have like one final question to like write us out. Geeky question. What's your favorite mute? I don't know. You all play Shires, blah, blah, blah. Shires is great.
I like Trum Corps.
You like Trum Corps? Okay.
Yeah, for straight mute. It's
Okay.
pretty
Anybody else got anything fun stuff?
Joe Rawl straight.
Or else straight?
I have mutes that they're no longer made anymore, but there's one mute that I totally love. It's a bucket mute made by Facet Mutes.
Yeah.
There were these mutes that were wooden, and they made a bucket for a little bit that I absolutely love. It's a fantastic bucket. But if you can't get that, in my humble opinion, you got to go with the straight up stone lined red and white bucket.
Classic.
Don't get one of those things that goes in the bell, looks like a rice cooker. You need a real bucket mute, son.
No, you know what works great as a bucket mute is those the soft tone mutes.
Yep.
And you just dangle them over the bell about halfway over. The problem is, I actually asked Brad this because he recorded me on a piece while I was playing this dog on mute. The B flat partial is horrific. The eighth partial is horrific. I was playing B flat in third, like half a step high, just to get it close. But if you don't have to worry about that partial, those soft tone mutes, and they also work great as a practice mute because you can just wrap the whole bell and crumple them up, throw them in your case.
What are we crumpling up and throwing in trombone cases?
Nothing.
Okay.
In a backpack because that Shires trombone has to stay pristine.
You don't want to know how many people have accidentally ran over their trombones, and then we get emails about it. So let's be safe.
You didn't have to put me on blast, Sam.
Not you, not yet. I hope. Not that I remember. So let me just see. Like, I had another question that was really great before we move on. Really quick, let's use this as a soapbox for any other project that you guys are working on. Brad, do you want to like chat a little bit about where people can find awesome videos for inspiration about STS to do up their practice? And
yeah, sure. Were you going to put the links to?
I added links in the comment section for each presenter, so like you guys can go through the comments and find info about each of our presenters, the studios that they teach at. But Brad, maybe just give a quick shout out for that. That would be great.
Sure. Yeah. The STS YouTube channel, we're just past 10,000 subscribers and almost 3 million video views. So
crazy.
Thank you to everybody like me that's a big trombone nerd out there and likes to watch videos. And our CSU trombone studio is at about 2 million video views now as well. So there's a lot of great stuff out there on just those 2 YouTube channels, plus a whole lot more of them. Other projects that I'm working on right now, besides the STS, of course, which is a continual thing. They're unfortunately not Shires artists, but it's a project I'm working on right now. There's a fantastic recording that we did in January. Jim Markey and Mike Roylance up in Boston did some great orchestral excerpt work and some duets together. So that's my sort of ongoing recording project that we're in the editing phase on right now of that. And so that's about it for me.
What about the rest of y'all?
I've got 2 things. One's more imminent. My brass quintet. Last summer, a month before ITF, we recorded an album. It's all arrangements that I wrote by various composers, and I'm really proud of the project. It's the meat of the project is an arrangement I wrote of Tombeau de Couperin by Maurice Ravel, which I'm happy that it sounds very un-brass quintet-y. I'm really happy with that. So we just sent the masters off to MSR Classics, and that'll come out available on all the services soon, coming over the summer. And then my friend Evan Conroy, who's bass trombonist in the Louisiana Philharmonic, he and I have a duo. We're called Make More Noise. And I was awarded a really generous grant at Ball State, and that's allowing us to commission 5 new pieces for tenor and bass trombone duo.
Wow, that's cool.
And we already have 4 that we've already commissioned, and we're going to record those. We're going to tour with those, assuming travel is permitted, to Costa Rica and Colombia this spring, and then also a little winding road over to ATW in the spring as well. Again, assuming that all happens. If not, that'll all happen in the future. So I'm excited about those 2 personal projects, and then just kind of continuing on forward. We commissioned a piece for ITF, the trombone choir at Ball State, by Jim Beckel, called Clouds of the Cosmos, and we were going to record that a week ago, but obviously that didn't happen. So we're going to work on that as soon as we're all back together.
Jay, Megan, Joe, anybody?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Okay.
I'll jump in here. So we had a really huge, massive trombone day right before everything shut down.
You were like the last ones to get your rent in.
Yes,
yeah, and then can I just say, we were Joe's first canceled gig after that.
And we were his last actual gig. So we were thrilled to be able to have that.
Stressful week.
We were literally his last performance, and we were so thrilled to be able to have that. We had about 500 participants. It was amazing. The students just did a phenomenal job. And so we were really, really super excited because we had an invitation to Midwest. So we'll be at Midwest this December. which is in itself amazing.
Yeah.
We are going to premiere, we're going to premiere a new work by Andrew Markle, who's written the Artifacts Concerto for Peter Steiner. So we're going to premiere a new work by him. And the very awesome special guest that we're going to have will be Joe Lessie performing with us at Midwest. And we're going to do a really special, awesome piece with him. We're very, very excited about it. So again, hoping everything smooths out and we can all be in Chicago in December.
Right.
Not necessarily the place that everybody wants to be in December, but for Midwest, we're really excited about that. So
it's charming in December.
Lovely. So that's our big project that's coming up for us.
Wow, that's crazy.
I can vouch from experience. Taking a trombone choir to Midwest is one of the coolest experiences ever. My guys loved it. We went 2 years ago, and it was an absolute blast. Which is actually, just to piggyback on this, I don't have a whole lot of projects going on right now because we had a calendar year that went. We had Joe Lessie on campus in January, and then my group played at the ITF, and then my group played at Midwest, all in the same calendar year.
That's nuts. Wow.
And I burned myself out real bad, which is another topic for another panel discussion called burnout.
That'll be a fun panel.
Yeah. So I took this academic year and I pulled the foot off the gas a little bit, let the kids sort of settle down, let them work on some personal projects. I have a CD that just came out that the one and only Dr. Palmer produced. The CD is out, but it is not on iTunes yet. The final contract is being signed as we speak, and it should be on iTunes ASAP.
That's great.
And oddly enough, the contract is being signed by the composer who I know the most on the CD. He just never signed the contract. So we're getting that signed and taken care of. So that CD will be out on iTunes, CD Baby. I don't know what else, soon. So
Wow, awesome.
we also have, as a fun little thing, in the fall, our low brass workshop. It's not as big as Kingsville's, because again, what they do down there in Kingsville, that's like trombone on.
It's nuts.
It's all the barbecue that fuels it. That's really what it is. Let me tell you.
Oscar has made me jealous, and I want to buy a smoker.
On a daily basis. Yeah.
But we do have a pretty good sized low brass workshop that we do with the tuba and euphonium studio here at the Twinkle studio. And I'm not going to say the guest artists are yet because we haven't signed contracts with them yet, but it is a 100% Shires artist event. So it's a euphonium artist who plays Eastman, and it's a trombonist who plays a bigger trombone down there in the Southeast somewhere that nobody's ever heard.
Badass.
So we're pretty excited about it.
That's cool.
Brian, it was Brian. Brian was our first artist. When I first got the job, Brian and I went to the Alessi seminar together, and we were in a quartet together in 2009. And so when I first got this job, he was my first sort of major guest artist because he had just won Atlanta. So it's kind of fun. This sort of brings us all back full circle that Brian's coming back, and
That's very cool.
Kind of a fun moment for me. So
it's
more personal than the kids. It's Brian. The kids will go nuts. It's fine.
Oh yeah, they'll have a total blast. It'll be great. Joe, what about you, bud?
I'm working up a program entitled Cultural Exchanges, just really having a bunch of different composers, both women, African-American, from all different places. And I'm looking forward to taking that on tour next year.
Solo trombone and piano or different?
Trombone and piano.
Nice.
And just something that's easy to take instead of trying to take the trio out. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. It's really going to showcase different aspects of my playing and really kind of bring awareness to different composers. I think that's critical right now. A lot of people are actually writing for trombone, and
like this the new vogue thing.
Yeah, and so I think it's incredibly important that we present this material and we make it a passion project and just get it out to as many people as possible. Also, I'm looking forward to presenting at a couple conferences coming up next year, and just hopefully back making music with people.
That's awesome. So I have one final question for everybody. And then I think we'll probably end this wonderful and lively discussion. And thanks to everybody who tuned in. First and foremost, this has been a total blast, and it's been fun to get some comments and some questions coming in. Just as a quick housekeeping thing, we'll have this live on the Facebook. I'm going to throw it over to Instagram TV and also put it on our YouTube channel. And we will do more of these things. For right now, I have them scheduled every week for the next couple months. Thursday evenings, 8 o'clock Eastern, in terms of time zone. But we'll cover a bunch of topics: trombone, trumpet, low brass, pedagogical, masterclasses, a whole bunch of stuff. So stay tuned, hopefully on a weekly basis, and we'll work on the actual liveness of this since we had the issues before. But for the final question for each of you, what's the most important thing that you want your student to learn from you? It's a hard question.
I think the problem here is there's so many inappropriate answers, Sam. That's what we're all struggling with right now.
I know, that's why everybody just suddenly put their thing on mute.
I'm going to put it on mute again because I don't know yet.
Anybody want to jump in? Is there like one thing, whether it's musical or it's like philosophical or it's personal? Or...
I'll hop in. I guess my one takeaway, it's the same thing I look for with students coming into the studio. I want them to leave with a sense of work ethic and personal accountability and some sort of purpose and striving for the future, so that there's a personal fire within the student. Because I always feel like if they have that, they're gonna do whatever their project is, whether it's a college trombone professor, principal trombone, a major symphony, elementary music. It doesn't matter, as long as they have that leaving and they have the work ethic and the desire, then it'll take care of itself.
I recognize that this is going to be probably a similar answer for most people, but
mine's a little different. I think for me, the most important thing to take away is that what we do, meaning making music, is important. It is critically important to humanity, to society. I think especially we're realizing that now when we can't do it together in front of a live audience. Yeah. It is worth working hard for. It is worth doing. It is worth advocating for in every way that we possibly can, whether as educators or performers or whatever. So I think a lot of people want to do it. They think it's cool. And I think there's something way more important than that, and that is that what we do is critically important. So that's I hope the biggest takeaway.
I would say that I think students should, when they're doing this, and this is to piggyback off of Brad, is to make sure that you're not losing the fact that you're just playing these notes. You're making a connection. You're creating an experience when you're performing. So it's extremely critical that you're thinking about that when you're in the performance aspect. I also want to encourage my students to make sure that you are open and available to all different types of music. That's so important because it really shapes you as a musician. It shapes you as a performer. And so if we do not have these different parts that have if we can't pull from these different aspects, that kind of limits our performance and our take and our view. So just to be available and just be open to the process of learning about different types of music.
And one thing also, whether I think with Justin and Brad kind of giving two sides of the spectrum, the personal side is, we want you to be good people. We want you to be people that will contribute to society and do something that is meaningful. And, that music is critically important. One just little note about that comes to mind for me is whether you become a musician or not. If you become a musician, advocate for it. If you don't become a musician professionally, advocate for it. You are going to be one of those people in the world who is on the concert stage or in the audience. We need both people. So whether you're going to be a musician or not, music is important however you move through life. And we want good people on both sides of the stage and in the audience. So that's what it means to me, I suppose.
That's a great point.
Okay, wow. first of all, the other 4 people on this panel, and you too, Sam, I want to just say how much respect I have for you all. This has been so cool. And I guess I would say that this was something I tried to, what I hope my students get from studying with me is something I tried to prove during the ITF, which is the supreme importance of the hang among musicians. I think that is, as musicians, that is maybe the most important thing. And along those lines, this is something I tell my kids all the time is that, and they get to know this very quickly about me, is that I do not take myself very seriously, but I take my craft very seriously. And I think that finding the balance between those things for me has helped, and I think that can help them as they go forward. And if you do those 2 things, then it also makes you a better hang after the gig. So. And
ergo leads to more gigs because people want to spend time with you.
It's true. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you've got a double B flat, if you're a total. Well, I can't use my weekend words yet. It's not Friday, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I was thinking, Sam.
I gotcha. Yeah. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I gotcha. Well, I want to thank our panelists for being involved tonight. Again, apologies for the technical issues with the live stream. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in. We've had some great questions, responses. We've seen a lot of friends who have been joining the live stream, so thank you so much for viewing it. So many of our panelists are, as you know, amazing teachers, professors, professional musicians, chamber musicians, all of it. A lot of them are also teaching online lessons. So if you want to get to know any of our panelists a little bit further, for some of them, there's contact info. If you have questions about one of our panelists, feel free to email us at info@shires.com. Happy to help put you in touch with someone. This is an interesting time for sure, and it's really important to come together, and seeing these great people on the other side of my screen, even though it's not in real life physically, it's so nice to be able to connect with people. So tune in for more of these things while we bring out some really wonderful people, not just great trumpet or trombone or euphonium players, but just great people. I think at the end of the day, that means the world to so many of us, and it keeps us grounded. It keeps us aware of what's going on and what really matters. So thanks again to everybody, and this has been a total blast, and I'm really thrilled that I got to get everybody on the same call all at the same time. So
thank you, Sam. You're awesome.
Yeah.
Best in the biz.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.